Okay, so we're back looking at this is a pretty long interview. It's going to be Patsy and John at some point. Patsy for now, but John a little bit later. And so they're sort of answering questions. I guess they have a claim against Mr. Wolf in this case, and like I said, it's pretty long. So let's jump right in. I don't want to take too much time with introductions, but the lawyer has just laid the groundwork to opportunities to object to basically protect John and Patsy. So here we go.
Yes, you'll at least deem them relevant for the purposes of the deposition.
I'll have to deal with that on a question by question
I understand,
basis.
but you do understand that if in fact one of the claims is that Mrs. Ramsey was somehow involved in either the authorship of the ransom note or in the death of her daughter, that questions involving that are in fact relevant for the purposes of the federal rules.
I don't have any problem with acknowledging that issues regarding ransom note authorship by Mrs. Ramsey and the issue of whether she, as contended by you and Mr. Wolf, killed her daughter are clearly part of Mr. Wolf's lawsuits, and that's part of the burden that Mr. Wolf has to carry to prove that beyond clear and convincing evidence. The point being, though, that there are a host of matters that would go to the subject matter but are not specifically confined to those claims and the defenses, the basic defense being truth, that the published statements were true, and that, in fact, Mrs. Ramsey was not involved in the criminal death of her daughter. I think the only other defense we have is not something you'd be questioning Mrs. Ramsey about, and that might go to the issue of, I think, the 13th defense and the issue of publicity by the plaintiffs. But I don't think we're going to have a problem, but, you know, for example, personal private information about the Ramsey's life at present certainly would not be relevant to the claims made. And that's just one example. And so I just want to make sure we protect that on the record. I think we understand where we're heading, and so let's get going and get there.
Okay.
You want to swear the witness, please, Mr. Gallo.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear the testimony about to give the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth to be honest?
Yes, I do.
Good afternoon. Good morning, Mrs. Ramsey. Thank you for being here. You've just heard your attorney explain basically the claims in this action. Is there anything that you need clarified with respect to what he said before we go forward?
I don't think she can answer that question.
Okay, I want to give her the opportunity
we have to send her to law school and let her go 24 years of practice before we'd have to ask her if she can understand anything I might say.
Okay. All right.
You can clarify a contract. You can clarify legal language. You don't need law school for that. You're a lawyer. If you have questions about anything, then I might ask, okay, you know, just in case, like you were talking about, you know, my claims against him for this, that, and the third. I just want to make sure that what you're saying is that I can or cannot talk about this, right? Yes. What we're saying is this, that, and the third. That's it. You don't need to go through 24 years of practice for that. Deflection.
Mrs. Ramsey, I believe that you were the co-author on a book called The Death of Innocence. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I'd just like to ask you, in your own words, though I know there's a discussion in the book, why it is that you wrote the book, Death of Innocence.
My husband and I wrote the book so that we could make sure that the truth was presented accurately from our own hearts and lips.
Were there any other reasons?
No, sir.
I'm going.
So you got an attitude. So you got a smug little attitude because you got your lawyer sitting there protecting you, stopping you from saying anything. So you got a little attitude and you smug about it too. And so, no, sir, I ain't got nothing to say about it. No, sir, no other reason. Okay.
No. There's a reference on page 408 of the here of your book.
Let's talk about
Mr. Lynn first.
Want to
The paperback
mark this as
edition.
a-
No, I would just simply want to
This is
refresh
page 408
refresh
of
your
the
memory with
paperback.
respect, yes, with respect to the paperback, where there's
Okay, are you asking her to look at the
yeah,
highlighted
the
portion?
highlighted portion there, just as to refresh your memory with respect to maybe another reason why the book was written.
When you're not representing that this paragraph talks about why the book was written.
Well, it's one of the express reasons for going into the material that is going into there, with the hope that the killer will be caught. The truth being that the Ramseys, contrary to reported media reports, were not responsible for their daughter's death, and that this book, in fact, not only shows that, but also the book contains a chapter on the murderer, meaning that there's a profile of the potential murderer. And I wanted to know from Mrs. Ramsey whether the purpose of the book was something more than just a general, you wanted the truth out. Was the purpose of the book also to present information to the public, who might then be able to come forward, as to who the murderer was in this particular case?
All right, that didn't have anything to do with page 4.
Well, it's mentioned there that's one of the stated goals of the
we may
Ramsey.
just be parsing words. This talks about their goal to bring the killer to justice.
Right. And was this
Was the book
part of your goal?
consistent with
Yeah.
their goal? That I think that's a fair question.
So could you repeat the question?
All right. You'll be asking me to do a lot of that today, believe me. Was one of the goals of writing the book to help in the solution of this crime, identifying the possible murderer, meaning that if you put this information before the public, that maybe somebody would have information that could then come forward? And you object?
I object the form of the question,
Okay.
but go ahead and finish. I interrupted you. I thought you were through.
I'd just like Mrs. Ramsey to explain whether or not that was part of the goal of the book, was basically to assist in finding the killer of JonBenet Ramsey.
Well, I believe there was a section of the book that talks about the profile of the killer,
right.
as we have been told about him. So that information, yes, was included in the book to be brought forth to the public in the event that that would assist
Right.
in someone remembering things that would lead us to the killer.
So would it
You see how difficult? They just said the same thing. That's what he asked. Like, did you put this profile of the killer in the book in order to, was part of your goal in putting this profile in the book to help assist with finding the killer? There was a profile of the killer as we had been given. Yeah. I object to the way you asked the question. I'm just simply asking, was part of the goal of the book to try to help find the killer? I mean, part of this book, part of the goal, that's a very valid question. Part of the goal in this book is saying, okay, we were not the killers. Okay, part of the goal, that's number one. Second goal is not only are we not the killers, but we have a profile of who the killer might be. And this is who he might be according to the research and the profiles that we have been given. Maybe somebody out there knows this and they can help us find. That's what he just said.
be fair to say that the purpose of the book was to do something other than just simply tell the truth about the case, that there was you were trying to assist the investigation in some way by including certain information in the book, such as the profile of the murderer?
The reason that I wrote the book is so that there is in one place, in black and white, an accurate account of what happened. I mean, when I was writing it, I was thinking of my children and my grandchildren. There are so many stories out there that are false and misleading and untrue. I wanted I was thinking of this as a historical document to give to my children.
Could you explain, to the best that you remember, the process by which you wrote the book? I mean, did you sit down with a pen and pad, or did you use a dictaphone? How is the book written? Given that both you and John are listed as authors, the actual writing process.
I object to the form of the question.
Okay.
You may answer the question if you understand it. The problem is you kind of sometimes ask 2 or 3 questions within one.
No, I understand.
And I want
He
her to be
didn't.
clear on exactly what.
No, he didn't. That was one question. How did you write the book? Did you write it with a pen and pad? Did you sit down at a computer and write it? Did you dictate the book? That's one question. What the heck are y'all talking about?
Question is, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he's trying to find out whether you actually physically typed on a computer, dictated into a tape, made handwritten notes. Is that what you're asking?
Exactly.
You understand that?
How you
Patsy?
went?
I think we did some of all of that.
Okay. Did you and Mr. Ramsey sit physically together and write the book, or did you write it in separate, environments? Meaning you're in one part of the house, he's in another part. Did you compose it that way?
Some of all of that. We were living in an apartment at the time, so it was a small living space. So we were.
At some point, I believe there was some. Well, I'll withdraw that question. Did anyone else assist you in writing the book?
We had an editor that was provided by the publisher,
Right.
and a ghostwriter, if you
Right.
want to call it that, who helped us with some of the structure and organization.
Correct.
Who's the ghostwriter?
I think his name is in the book. There's some. Let's see. Oh, Robert Wise, Reverend Robert Wise.
When you looked at the final manuscript of the book, was it very different from what you had originally prepared and given to Mr. Wise or Reverend Wise?
Well, now you assuming that they prepared a manuscript and gave it to Wise,
Yeah,
and then got back a manuscript.
At some point, I'm assuming that their work product was turned into a manuscript of some sort, and that Mr. Wise worked with it in some way.
Well, I'm not sure that's right.
All right,
I mean,
well,
you may have been given to him piecemeal, Darnay. I think you need to figure that out first.
I'll withdraw that question and ask you very simply whether explain exactly how you worked with Reverend Wise on writing the book.
Well, he would sit and we would talk, and I had some things that I had written. Sometimes he would ask questions about things. It was kind of a back and forth. Sometimes he would take something I had written and edit, and then it was kind of an evolving process.
Did he use a tape recorder to take any of the things that you were saying?
I believe so, yes.
Did you give him written notes to look at?
I can't remember exactly. I don't.
Did you prepare notes for the book? Written notes?
Yes. Sometimes. I had some things that I had written, some things we just talked about.
Did you keep copies of your notes?
No, I did not.
Do you know what happened to your notes?
They were thrown away as I finished with that part of the writing.
You threw them away?
Yes.
Were you shown a copy of the what we would call the rough draft?
I guess what I'm trying to figure it out is that they made this reverend a ghostwriter on the book, but he was merely there to smooth over the rough and rawness of what they were saying. Essentially, what I'm saying is that they ran under the protection of the church in order to make what they were saying sound good, and in order for it to be digestible to the climate at the time. So whereas Patsy would have said something to the effect of, you're not going to, accuse me of killing my daughter. he would come back and shade it a little bit and say, well, you know, you don't want to come off like that. What you want to do is you want to come off as sympathetic in a way. And, you know, we are all God's children. And so there's, you know, I know the preciousness of life, and I would never harm, you know, in any way that, you know, the one little precious hair on JonBenet's head. She is a gift from God, is what he was there to do. I was looking to see if he had any prior experience ghostwriting. And I don't see any experience other than this, which was clearly to shade some things over.
Draft of the book before it was sent to the publisher?
There were many drafts, yes, that we would keep reviewing.
Who would prepare the drafts?
A typist, I think, or the editor, perhaps. She kept a main manuscript going.
In main file?
I'm not sure how she did it, but she would keep it.
Were you given an opportunity to review the final manuscript before it was sent to the publisher?
I believe so. I believe so.
Do you remember reviewing?
There were so many iterations, I can't remember exactly which.
When was the first time you had an opportunity to read the book from beginning to end, as it was published?
After it was published?
As in the form in which it was published.
Like the galleys?
It could have been a galley. I don't know what point.
You mean the hardback book?
Yeah, the hardback book.
Probably when it was completely published in March.
So, did you see anything that looked like what they call galleys?
I don't think I saw galleys.
So, the first time you actually were able to read the book then is when it appeared in hardcover? In the actually bound hardcover edition?
Well, I read the manuscript.
Right.
I don't know if you call that the book.
So there was a manuscript, a completed manuscript that you were able to read before you before it was sent to the printer. Is that correct?
I believe so.
And did you review it?
I believe I did.
And did you look at portions of it in terms of statements that were accurate or not accurate?
Well, I primarily, the way the book is written, I speak, John speaks, I speak, John speaks, and I was mainly concentrated on what I had put in the book.
Right.
Do you remember in the book whether or not there is a theory of the crime that was, as you believed it may have been committed, talked about in the book, written about?
He's good. He is good. He is good. He has certainly done his homework. You have certainly done your homework, sir. I applaud you. You are good. Because the lead up is, tell me, did you read the manuscript before it was published? Did you have access to read it before it was published? Oh, I think I read it. Essentially, what she was trying to say was, I think I read it when everybody else read it. I got the manuscript, but was it completed? I guess you could call that the book. That's what's going to be printed, Patsy. Did you read it or not in its completed state before it was published? Did you mark off and say, yes, this is what I say? And so then once he got that answer, he goes on to say, okay, what in the book did you read? Or I read my statements. Okay, great. Now that we know that you read your statements, you made a theory about the book, and this is what it was. He's doing pretty good. I like it.
I'm not sure
Well,
what you mean.
the book contains the theory of the crime. Do you remember what the theory of the crime was in the book?
I'm not sure what you're talking about in the book. So,
Oh, well,
there may be,
The whole book is,
there may be a number of different theories that are discussed in whole or
Well, I just
part.
want to see what she remembers.
But we're not here to engage in a memory contest about what is or is not in the book. If you have a question about something that is in the book, I think fairly you're required to put it in front of her,
Right.
give her the opportunity to look at it, put it into context, and then respond to your question. So if there is something in the book, be it theory or whatever, show her what you want her to look at, she'll be glad to answer your
Right.
question.
Well, I am going to test her memory right now.
We're not going to engage in a memory contest
It's
of
not
what's
a
in the
contest.
book.
I have a right to see what, if anything, Mrs. Ramsey currently remembers about the theory of the crime.
That's a different question. You're asking her about what is in the book,
Okay.
and she's entitled,
Right.
and you know she's entitled, to see something that you are referencing in the book,
Right. I'm
put
not-
it into context, and then answer your question.
Okay. Mrs. Ramsey,
I'm asking you, did you put, you put a killer's profile in the book. You know that. Now, what theories, because John is very good at this. If you look at some of his other interviews that I've done or whatever on your own, John always appeals to authority. He always does that. Oh, well, this person said this about what could have happened. This person says this about what could have happened. I'm asking you, Patsy, essentially the same question. Is there something in the book that you put that you think would happen? And that's a very easy question because top of mind. Well, yeah, I think there are 2 or 3 things that I probably put in that book that I think, and I understand she might not remember, but there are 2 or 3 things within that book that I think I put, that were top of mind when I think could have happened. Number 1, number 2, and number 3. These are my theories that I think. Now, there's been other theories that come up at this point, but this is what I think. That's top of mind. Like you guys are acting like you don't remember a dang thing. Like y'all don't remember anything. You dang near don't even remember that you wrote the book. Man.
I'm going to withdraw the question. I'd like you to tell me what, if anything, you can remember about the theory of the crime that you may have developed over time.
Someone was in our home the night of December 25th and murdered our daughter while we slept.
Is there anything more about that theory that you remember or have developed?
Well, that's basically it. There was someone who was not a member of our family in our home that night, took JonBenet from her bed and murdered her.
With respect to that theory of the crime, is there anything else that you can remember about it?
What do you mean? Is there anything else you can
Remember
about
that night as far as it leading to developing that theory?
I'm going to have to. That's a question that is either so vague or so broad. You're asking her now to say, is there anything she can remember about that night that would lead to her developing that theory? Why don't you ask her a specific question, Darnay?
Okay.
That's too broad and too vague.
All right. What is it about the events of that evening and the next day that has led you to this theory of the crime?
I found a ransom note. I found my daughter missing from her bedroom. And several hours later, our daughter was found dead in our home. That's pretty clear to make one draw the conclusion that someone came into our home and murdered her.
And you don't feel it was a member of your...
Oh, you got a clear theory now. Oh, it's pretty clear. Okay.
own family? Is that correct?
No, sir.
I think your answer is really yes, sir. Is that correct? Would require a yes response so that the record is clear. Don't we agree, Darnay?
Yes, that's
It was
fine.
not a member of my family.
Okay. All right. I'm going to take just a short break because I'm going to go into another area. I just wanted to sort of like generally
Sure.
establish
Whatever.
this. So let's take a 1 or 2 minute break. I know
Absolutely.
people can't hop up or whatever.
If you need to,
I'm
we
gonna-
don't mind moving.
No need to. I just wanted, just a natural break.
We can take it off the video too.
Yeah.
Maybe you could. Keep that down off the-
We're on the video record at 9:39.
I'll leave that for later.
We're on the video record at 9:39.
Mrs. Ramsey. Okay. Lynn, I want to proceed when you're ready.
Oh, absolutely. Go right ahead.
Oh, okay. Mrs. Ramsey, I would like you to look at page 407 of the paperback edition of your book, The Death of Innocence. I've highlighted a section I'd just like you to read, which begins numeric number 4 and then the ransom note. Could you read that, please, for the record?
4. The ransom note. Considered earlier and throughout the book, the note was written by the killer and remains an extremely important clue. An adequate amount of handwriting samples from the killer should conclusively tie him to the long and rambling note.
Mrs. Ramsey, do you still agree with that statement?
I'm not sure which statement.
The statement that you just read in your book, do you still agree with it?
Well, it's my belief that whoever wrote the ransom note probably had something to do with her murder.
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking me?
Yes, I am. I just want to know that.
You see what I'm saying? How clear was that question? Do you still stand by that statement? What statement? What statement are you talking about? You talking about the first sentence that I read? Or are you talking about the second sentence that I read? Which one? All right, Patsy, you got it.
I know this book was written a couple of years ago, and I just want to determine whether it's still your belief, that this statement is still your belief, that you believe that this statement to be true today.
Yes, I believe that. Yes, I believe that.
Okay. Now, I'd like you to turn to page 145 of The Death of Innocence, the paperback edition of it. And I'd like you to please read out loud, starting where it's highlighted, a week and a half after the 1st of February. If you could read that, please.
A week and a half after the 1st of February, the Denver Post ran an interesting observation on the handwritten ransom note that Douglas had spoken about on Dateline. The paper said, leaving a handwritten document at the scene of the crime in most cases is tantamount to leaving one's calling card. Bradley and other forensic document examiners say that it's nearly impossible for a person to disguise handwriting so that an expert can't link a suspect to a document, such as the note found in the Ramsey home. The older a person is, the more automatic and difficult it becomes to conceal the clues.
Right.
And the longer a document is, the harder it becomes to disguise one's writing.
Thank you. Do you agree with that statement?
For clarification, does she agree that that is what the Denver Post said, or do you ask?
No, I'm asking her. Well, I'm not asking her whether that's what the Denver Post said, because they're indicating in the book that. I just want to know if she agrees. Just because the statement is in here doesn't necessarily mean she agrees with it. I just like for clarification. Do you agree with that statement?
Or has any idea who Bradley is? For example,
I wasn't. I'm not really.
Bruh, come on, man. Like, y'all playing games like y'all are not familiar with what's going on in the media. You clearly know what's going on in the media and what people are saying about you. You're quoting Dateline and what the Denver Post said. You're quoting what you know, who's saying what in the media. You're very aware. So to sit here and act like you don't know what anybody said or what anybody means.
Concerned about whether she knows who Bradley is. I just want to know if she agrees with the statement that leaving a handwritten document at the scene of the crime, in most cases, is tantamount to leaving one's calling card. And also, why don't you
do it one at a time?
Start with that. Do you agree with that statement?
Well, I've been told that this is the ransom note of ransom notes, the longest one that people have ever seen, and that it's a lot of information for.
I don't like her eyes right here, because her eyes are telling me that now she is back on her heels, and she's saying, I've been told that this is that's a very John Ramsey thing to do, of course, but now your eyes are telling me that you know something. Now you're telling me you know something, And now you're going back in your head. Your eyes are peering straight at me, but you're thinking in your head. So your eyes are going straight ahead, but you're like, well, I think that I'm not going to give you nothing. Tell me what you know. That's what I'm asking you. You're waiting for me to help you out. I'm not helping you out. Tell me what you know.
Or discovering someone's handwriting. So I don't know whether it's tantamount to leaving a calling card, but
Okay.
I was wondering why you had put this statement in this book, if you don't agree with it.
Right.
I didn't
But
say I
see-
didn't agree with it.
I'm not sure that's her statement.
Oh, okay.
Again, going back to look in context, who writes
Oh,
this?
no, I
It's something
understand.
that was in the newspaper.
Yeah, I know, but it was included in the book for some purpose.
Right.
And I'm assuming, reading it, and I don't want to make an assumption, but I can only assume reading it, that it's put here because you agree with the basic premise of the article, or at least the basic premise of the section that's excerpt for this.
What's the question?
Well, I just want to know if she agrees with the first sentence, leaving a handwriting document at the scene of the crime, in most cases, is tantamount to leaving one's calling card. Do you agree with that statement?
With all due respect, I
Yeah.
think she's giving you an
Yes.
answer to that exact question.
Oh, okay. I wasn't certain that she had.
Let me
could
make
she-
sure so
yeah.
that I don't want you to not get an answer.
I mean, it would be consistent with the earlier statement on page 407 about an extremely important clue.
Yeah, I thought she did answer that. She said, well, I have been told that this is the ransom note of ransom notes, the longest that people have seen, that it is a lot of information for discovering someone's handwriting. So I don't know if it is tantamount to leaving a calling card. I mean, that's what she said.
Okay, so, if she could say yes or no, it would be very
Right.
helpful.
That would be, but it would only be helpful if it was the only answer she could give. I think she's entitled to give you
Okay.
her full answer, including an explanation. And I think she's told you she doesn't disagree with it, but the use of the phrase leaving a calling card, she's not in a position to comment on.
Okay.
A calling card would have been better because it would have had the person's name, address, and phone number.
Patsy, you know good and dang well that's not what we mean. You know good and dang well that's not what we're talking about. I'm talking about somebody's signature. Well, it would have been better if we would have had their signature, because that's not what I'm talking about. I'm asking you, do you agree with the statement? It's like somebody writes an article or says something about, criminals always, leave the back door open. That's the telltale sign that you've been robbed. You put it in the book. Do you agree with that or not? Oh, absolutely. I've had plenty of times in my life to where somebody's come in my back door and it's always been a criminal. So I tend to agree with that statement. Yes or no? Yep, I agree with that statement. Or nope, not always. Or no, I don't agree with that statement at all. That's it. Like this foolishness about, well, I don't know if it's tantamount or not. Okay. This is the legalese. Now he's instructed, the lawyer clearly has instructed to provide some sort of vagueness in your response. That's what's being instructed here. That's why we can't get a clear answer here.
Okay. I was curious as to why this had been put in the book, if you remember. Do you know why this statement was included in the book? The one that you just read, leaving a handwritten document at the scene of the crime?
Well, I don't remember exactly. It's been a couple
you
of years.
remember.
Why I don't remember exactly why we put it in there. I believe this is a section that John wrote, so you might want to ask him that.
All right.
Cool.
Were you ever asked to give handwriting exemplars at any time by anyone after your daughter's death?
Yes, I was.
Can you tell me who asked you to do that, not violating any attorney-client privilege?
The Boulder Police Department.
Did anyone else ask you to give handwriting exemplars beside the Boulder Police Department?
I gave several of them, but I can't. I believe it all had to do with the Boulder Police Department, whether
nobody-
it was the CBI
All
or
right, but nobody other than law enforcement asked you to give them handwriting exemplars. Is that true?
I don't remember anyone else asking me.
Okay. I just want to clarify it. And do you remember how many times you were asked to give handwriting exemplars by the law enforcement people or authorities in, I'm assuming it's in Colorado?
Yes, 5 or 6, I think.
Okay. In the back of the book, Appendix A, page 428, actually you can identify 429, it doesn't have 428 on the upper left-hand corner. It's called A Chronicle of Cooperation. And the paragraph that's second from the bottom, there's an indicating when handwriting samples were given by John and their dates, and then Patsy, their dates, and then Burke, their dates. Mm-hmm. Would you just review that and see if that refreshes your recollection with respect to the dates? Are those dates accurate or substantially accurate? If you can remember.
I'm sure they probably are.
Okay. And I'm counting them. There's a date, December 28th, January 4th, February 28th, April 12th, and May 20th. All right, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. It looks like 5. Does that...
You can tell as she shakes her head, yes. She's slowly, basically, it's essentially she's non-verbally watching him. Okay, what are you doing with these dates? Because you caught me before. You caught me before with something. I can't remember exactly what it was, but you caught me before with something. When he was asking about the ransom note and how it's the ransom note of ransom notes, you caught me with that. And so therefore I got to watch you now. And so as you're telling me these dates, you're about to use these facts, my own words against me. And now I'm on high alert.
What you remember?
That
To be the number of times?
That seems to be accurate, yes.
Okay. Were you ever asked, given an explanation by the law enforcement authorities as to why they were asking you to come in so many times to give exemplars? Why they needed you to give exemplars over a period of like 5 different dates?
I don't remember them really saying why they needed more.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Did anyone else, without telling me what was actually said, give you a reason as to why you were being asked for so many exemplars?
And here, you're not to give him, nor do I think he's asking you to give him any information about any discussion that you had between yourself and your attorneys. If there was any such discussion, he's not entitled to know that, and he's not asking about that.
Yeah. Was there anybody else, for instance, maybe Lou Smith may have asked you, maybe somebody from Alex Hunter's office might have asked you or told you or whatever, something that's not a privileged communication between you and your attorneys, if you remember?
No, just every time they asked me to do it, I willingly gave it.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask you about your reaction to that. Were you surprised that you were asked for so many exemplars, to come back 5 times, in fact? Were you surprised by that? Were you concerned about that?
I was not concerned particularly.
Do you know if anybody at any time expressed an opinion as to whether you were the author of the ransom note?
This is what I'll say. I'll stop it right there. But this is what I'll say about this. And we have a lot more to go, so don't go anywhere. But this is what I'll say about this. The energy has shifted clearly from the beginning of the interview till now. The energy has shifted because he caught her a couple times with some haymaker questions to where it's like, I'm using your words against you, and we can start dismantling your logic. And now, at looking back, I can see where my logic was faulty. And you are bringing that to light to where, as you're asking me these questions, I am now thinking about, oh, I should have said something to create a stronger case right there. Oh, I may have not been as thorough with that, or as concrete with that line as I should have been. And now she's thinking about that. And so now we're starting to see the energy went from smug and yes, sir, to now it's like, well, I don't know if I can answer anything. I don't know if I should be answering anything because we got you. Man, look, that's the video. Let me know what you think thus far. Comment, like, share, subscribe, engage. And until next video, take it easy.